Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'uzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. When the Holy Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina, there were 3 prominent Jewish tribes living in Medina among the 20+ total Jewish tribes. They were the Banu Qurayza, the Banu Nadir, and the Banu Kainuka. The chief of Banu Nadir was a man named Huyay, a key figure amongst the Jews of Medina. Huyay became a famous rabbi and scholar of high distinction within Medina. Huyay truly loved his daughter. He loved her so much that even if his other children were present, he would still only pay attention to her. This was the time when Medina's Jews were talking about the arrival of a man named Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying he might be the promised prophet foretold in the Torah, the prophet who would reclaim Judaism's lost status. So as a rabbi and tribal chief, Huyay went to go see for himself. That evening, when Huyay returned, he was in such shock that his daughter, the one he'd pay attention to, even if his other children were present, she says, he didn't even acknowledge her presence. He was asked, "Is it really him?" Huyay said, "Yes, by God." He then says, "By God, until our last breath, we must oppose Muhammad." At first, Huyay's opposition took the form of public debate with Muslims, but his opposition increasingly turned to hatred. But that enmity and hatred had no effect on Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because as Medina's head of state, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam drafted the constitution of Medina, which protected the Jews and said the Jews should form one community with the believers, even though the Jews followed their own religion. Furthermore, it said to seek mutual consultation and advice from the Jews. The Jews who joined this covenant would be helped by the Muslims. The Jews would not be put to any hardship, and their enemies would not be helped. The Jewish tribes would have rights similar to those of Muslims. The Jews would keep to their own faith, and the Muslims to their own. Medina would be a sanctuary for both the Jews and the Muslims equally. Now this is huge, because at the time Medina's Jews were at war with each other. As many of Medina's 2 major Arab tribes, the Aus and Khazraj, were converting to Islam, if Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted, he could have further weakened the Jews' power in Medina. Instead, when the chief of the Jewish Qurayza tribe complained that Huyay's tribe only paid half the blood money his tribe paid, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam changed the law so every tribe paid an equal amount of blood money. Skeptics can say that this is about politics, but the fact is, this was about the love of mankind and establishing peace in a society rife with war and decades of strife. In fact, the covenant makes it clear that the Prophet of Islam was determined to treat Jews with civility and kindness and to regard them as brethren. And further proof is that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam showed affection to Jews even when people told him not to. Once when a Jewish funeral procession passed by, he immediately stood up. When his companions protested that the deceased was a Jew, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, was he not a human? How can hate exist in a heart capable of such love? Today, I want to show you that anti-Semitism does not exist in Islam. It can exist. The Holy Prophet ﷺ taught us to love, even in the face of extreme persecution. At the same time, we need to call out injustice wherever we see it. The Holy Prophet ﷺ was very careful not to hurt the sentiments of those around him. On one occasion, a Jew came to him and complained that Hazrat Abu Bakr had hurt his feelings. The Holy Prophet summoned Abu Bakr and asked him what had transpired. Hazrat Abu Bakr explained that the Jew had started by saying that he swore by Moses, whom God had exalted above the whole of mankind, and that he, Abu Bakr, had thereupon retorted by swearing by Muhammad, whom God had exalted above Moses. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said, "You should not have said this, as the feelings of other people should be respected. Nobody should exalt me above Moses alayhi salam." Our society and culture creates discord and hatred in the name of freedom of speech. But look at the example of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how he sows the seeds of love by being considerate to others. Even though the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did in fact occupy a higher position than Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, but that affirmation was likely to hurt the feelings of that Jew and should have been avoided. One day, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam visited Huyay's tribe because they owed blood money. So Huyay told Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to wait. But instead of collecting the blood money, Huyay schemed with his tribe to drop a boulder on Prophet Muhammad. Allah Ta'ala, however, informed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam of the plot, and he left before anything happened. Any other head of state would have crushed this treason. The hate, the bloodlust would have overwhelmed them. Even in the current code of the United States of America, treason is punishable by death. Instead, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam only forced Huyay's tribe without any bloodshed to leave Medina. So that day, Medina lined up to see Banu Nadir march through its streets on 600 camels, playing tambourines and pipes, the women wearing silk, brocade, and velvet. Studies show that the psychology of hate is basically about compensating. Think about it. When something you love is harmed, you realize you can't undo it. So hating becomes a way to comfort yourself, a way to compensate, because at least something is being done to hurt the guy who hurt you. But when that happens, you simply cannot let go. That's one reason why the Khulafa teach us love for all, hatred for none. A true believer cannot hate. They have conviction that Allah Ta'ala will address every wrong. There's no issue of letting go because there's nothing to let go of. But that wasn't the case with Huyay. When he resettles in Khaybar, instead of being grateful that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam spared his and his tribe's lives, his hate for Islam overwhelms him. He can't let go. So Huyay leaves Khaybar and goes throughout Arabia, conspiring with Jewish and Arab tribes. And in 627, an army of 24,000 pagans and Jews march on Medina. Huyay then convinces the chief of the Banu Qurayza to break his treaty with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Remember, Qurayza was the same tribe who, because of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, now enjoyed the same amount of blood money as Huyay's tribe. That's why, despite his betrayal, the chief told Huyay, I have always found Muhammad loyal and faithful. Huyay's plan for this battle, known as the Battle of the Ditch, was to have the army of 24,000 attack Medina from one side, while the Qurayza would attack Medina's Muslim women and children from the other. In the end, the Muslim army held their ground. We said earlier that a telltale sign of the psychology of hate is that you cannot let go. In the aftermath of the battle, all Prophet Muhammad ﷺ demanded of the Qurayza, who were guilty of treason and plotting genocide, was that they leave Medina. It wasn't Prophet Muhammad ﷺ who couldn't let go, but the Qurayza refused to leave and demanded their own hand-picked judge decide their fate. So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ acquiesced. When the time came, the judge asked the Jews if they would accept his decision, and they agreed. Then he asked Prophet Muhammad ﷺ the same question, and he also agreed. The judge then declared his ruling from the Torah, which states, "Smite every male thereof with the edge of the sword, but the women and the little ones shalt thou take unto thyself. Thou shalt utterly destroy them." So after 5 years of treason and sedition, Huyay, a war criminal, along with the Qurayza, were executed. Reports of how many were executed that day vary widely, from 400 to 900 people. And some scholarship argues the number wasn't even remotely close to 400. But for argument's sake, let's say that 900 were executed that day. Even then, at least 4 things are clear. Number one, Huyay and the Jews of Banu Qurayza were guilty of sedition and treason. Number 2, the Jews insisted their own judge decide their fate. Number 3, that judge ruled based on the Torah. And number 4, had the Jews accepted Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's ruling instead, they would have only been exiled. So while many say this incident proves Islam is anti-Semitic, the reality is, just like US Senator and Jew Bernie Sanders recently said, it is not anti-Semitic to hold you accountable for your actions. Some may falsely accuse Prophet Muhammad ﷺ of hatred towards the Jews by this incident because the judge chosen ruled against their treacherous and treasonous tribal leaders. The executions and exile that happened were due to their actions and not due to any malice by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. The actions by these tribes continued after Huyay's death. But just like with Huyay, the enmity had no effect on Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Despite Huyay's tribe in Khaybar continuing to incite forces in Arabia, Iraq, Persia, and Rome, when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ set out for Khaybar, he intended to sign a peace treaty. But when the Jews of Khaybar insisted on fighting, and after 6 years of treason, sedition, and war, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was left with no option but to siege Khaybar. When it was over, a peace treaty was signed, and no one was killed besides combatants, one of whom was Huyay's son-in-law. Remember Huyay's daughter, the one who had lost her father and now her husband. She was beside herself. She says, "There's no one I hate more than Muhammad." Before talking about what happened to Huyay's daughter, let me take a small tangent. So far, it's been about rebutting claims that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ hated Jews. But I also have some questions I'd like answered. Specifically, if Islam is anti-Semitic, then why did Prophet Muhammad include a clause in Medina's constitution stating, "No Jew will be wronged for being a Jew"? Why, of more than 20 Jewish tribes living in Medina, did Prophet Muhammad only punish 3 Jewish tribes who are guilty of treason, sedition, conspiracy to assassinate, and fomenting civil war? Why did Prophet Muhammad only choose to exile those 3 tribes? And when that happened, why did a single other Jew not object or help? Why did at least one prominent Jew from each of these 3 tribes say the Jewish tribe was wrong and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was truthful? Why did those Jews who hated Prophet Muhammad never say he targets us because we're Jewish? Why, when a Jew and cousin of Huyay by marriage tried to poison Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, did he forgive her? Why, when the fate of the Qurayza was about to be decided, did so many Muslims urge the judge to show leniency? Why did Prophet Muhammad never desecrate a Torah or synagogue? Why does the Quran sanction jihad to protect synagogues? Why are 18 of the 26 prophets mentioned in the Quran Jewish prophets? Why do Muslims say alayhi salam after mentioning any of these prophets? Why do Muslims, even extremists, never insult any of these prophets? Why don't you see that Huyay himself says he opposed Prophet Muhammad ﷺ only because he was not Jewish? In other words, the Jews who hated Prophet Muhammad were the only ones guilty of anti-Semitism. Why do you see a mote in your brother's eye but not the beam in thine own? Islam has waited centuries for an answer to these questions. So while we wait, let's get back to Huyay's daughter. In 7th century Arabia, marriages between the ruling class served as a way to remove any fear of an attack between tribes and to help heal. So when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ learned a woman named Safia was Huyay's daughter and a princess of the Banu Nadir, he asked her to marry him. He wanted to heal. And believe it or not, she accepted. The same woman who, having lost her father and husband, had said, "There's no one I hate more than Muhammad," now agrees to marry him and become al-Mu'mineen, mother of the believers. How did that happen? Our mother herself says this when describing her wedding night. Hazrat Safia says, "From our very first meeting, he treated me with such love, care, and compassion." And the Holy Prophet ﷺ was so mindful of her sentiments that it led her to be completely free of any earlier prejudice against the Prophet. And all of her harsh feelings for him had vanished. She further says, "As I stood up after having my first meeting, there was nobody more beloved to me than him. He was the most beloved and most dearly loved." Hazrat Safia's grace and ability to let go of any bias isn't just a lesson for Islam's critics, it's also instructive for Muslims. So many Muslims criticize the West for the brutality we see in Gaza, but ignore that nearly 60 Muslim countries cannot stop it. If they only listened to Hazrat Khalifatul Masih V, Ayatollah ibn Aziz's repeated pleas for the Muslim world to unite, then this would never happen. In a recent khutbah, Hazur says, "The Muslim world must establish their unity. This is the only way to eradicate disorder from the world. They should unite and raise a resounding voice for the fulfillment of the requirements of justice and the rights of the oppressed, wherever they may be. If they unite as one, then there will also be strength in their voice. Otherwise, these Muslim governments will be responsible for the loss of innocent Muslim lives." And like anyone consumed by hate, our enemies also need to let go. lame accusations of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat being Zionist agents can't overcome the fact that our Khulafa have been at the forefront of defending Palestine, or the Hazrat Khalifatul Masih V is openly condemning Israel every khutbah and instructing us to pray for Palestine, and doing so while living in the West. How could we be Zionists when Sir Chaudhry Muhammad Zafrullah Khan Sahib opposed the formation of Israel, not because of anti-Semitism, but due to the injustice that is manifesting before our eyes today? With that said, following their wedding, as a new couple prepared to leave Khaybar, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ folded his own cloak onto the carriage so the daughter of Huyay, Hazrat Safia, would have something soft to sit on. He then had Hazrat Safia step on his knee to mount the horse. Throughout that journey, she says, he showed me an unlimited degree of love. I was a young woman and would repeatedly fall asleep and hit my head on the wooden carriage. The Holy Prophet ﷺ would support my head with much love and affection and make me go to sleep and say, "O daughter of Huyay, take care of yourself, lest in the state of sleep or slumber you get hurt." After returning to Medina, that love transcended from love between husband and wife to love for having a Jewish identity. One day, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came home to find Hazrat Safia crying. When he asked what happened, she said, some of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's family had made fun of her for being Jewish while they were related to Prophet Muhammad. Look at his response. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "O daughter of Huyay, why are you crying? You should have said, how could you fare better than me, as Aaron is my father, Moses my uncle, and Muhammad my husband." It's that love that Hazrat Safia cry out during the last illness of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. I wish the sickness that afflicted you had afflicted me instead. And it's that love that sprung from Huyay's bitter hate of the Holy Prophet that would shock Huyay far more than the shock he experienced after seeing Prophet Muhammad years prior. Because as the central figure from the central tribe of a feud that has lasted 1400 years, how many of those who think Islam is anti-Semitic look at Huyay as a hero or even know he existed? The hate he had for Islam didn't even allow him to find happiness when he died for the cause he believed in. If love for Judaism was really what motivated him, he could have spent his life unifying all of Medina's 20-plus Jewish tribes. But now, he's remembered just like Abu Jahl, as someone whose hate couldn't hold a candle to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's love. Other Banu Nadirs and Banu Qurayzas did happen and sadly will happen. But the love of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ will overcome. Palestine's mothers will continue to bless their children with names like Dawood and Safia. And yet, despite all of the wrongdoings, Allah's mercy is greater, and there's a way out. As the Quran says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالنَّصَارَى وَالصَّابِئِينَ من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر وعمل صالحا فلهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Surely the believers and the Jews and the Christians and the Sabians, whichever party from among these truly believes in Allah and the last day and does good deeds, shall have their reward with their Lord, and no fear shall come upon them, nor shall they grieve. And because of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, despite everything that Huyay and his kinsmen did to our prophet, to our master prophet, insults, treason, murder, war, etc., from the 7th century until the end of time, billions of Muslims have called and will call Safia, a Jew of nobility, daughter of a rabbi, descendant of Aaron and Moses alayhi salam, and daughter of Huyay, as al-Mu'mineen, as our mother. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community, under the leadership of our beloved Imam, will continue trying to unify the Jews, Muslims, Christians of the world to ensure that we all live in peace and harmony with each other. Jazakumullah.